Hello, everyone. This is Lupe Munoz.
And I'm Steve McKeon, and this is the Leadership Exchange. Lupe, can you believe it? We are on podcast number 11.
Numero 11. Yes, you're right. Number 11. It's a great episode because this is where we're going to do a slight pivot into now focusing around the team aspect. We've been spending a lot of time in previous episodes talking about the leader and how you need to behave and things you need to think about as a leader to create that atmosphere. But now we're going to talk about the team that's created within that atmosphere. Specifically, we're going to talk about high performance work teams. It sounds simple, but what does it really mean, right? In general, high performance work teams are teams that have clear goals and objectives. They have shared accountability. They have effective communication, a lot of trust and respect within the team. And as Steve and I were recently talking about, an ability to have constructive conflict, which may throw people off because they're not used to conflict is bad. Not necessarily. Conflict can be very healthy, actually, and you want some of that to exist within a team. But we'll talk a little bit about that. But Steve, tell us a story to get us started, though.
You bet, Lupe. And just kind of a quick recall to our first guest that we had on the podcast, Alan Leibowitz. And Alan Leibowitz had created what I think was a really good high-performance work team at the time, and that environment that he created so that we could operate as a high-performance work team was, really critical. So thanks again to Alan, and a quick shout-out to him. I'm going to relay just a couple of fun stories about seeing high-performance work teams develop and then come to life. And we'll go into a lot more detail around the different attributes of high-performance work teams. But I want to talk about a team, and I've got several I can pick from, but I'm going to call out one that was in the Kuwait job environment where I was working. And so I went into this environment to help a colleague out, sent there at the request of the president of the company I was working for. And our goal was really to figure out how we could, rebuild some vehicles very quick and get them back to the people that needed them. And so the traditional process there of rebuilding these vehicles is to go in and do like a quick review of the vehicle, a tech maintenance review, and identify which things needed to be repaired or replaced. Maybe there's a recall on an item. And so that process then vehicle would come into a bay, and then it gets a quick assessment, sometimes took a little bit longer. And then once that assessment was done, they pull the vehicle back out of the bay, and they would send in a request for parts. Then 2-3 weeks later, parts might show up, and you start to do your repair. So in this operation, we didn't have 2 or 3 weeks. People needed vehicles back right away. And these were pretty beat up vehicles, majority of them battle damaged. And folks needed the vehicles right away. And so we had to come up with a different mindset, a different way of repairing these vehicles. And there was a gentleman I was working with at the time that had started really kind of putting some lean practices in place and, trying to create that environment for a different way of looking at vehicle repair and getting vehicles back into service quicker. The concept was great, but the one thing that was really missing was the people that were going to do the work, right? We had to go through this exercise of really identifying the individuals who were going to be open to two-way communication, to have that mutual trust, have clear common goals, and have the ability to disagree about something, but then quickly agree on a path forward. And through that process, they developed trust. They developed really common set of goals. Natural leaders emerged out of those teams, and it was a difficult experience, but probably one of the most positive memories I've had as a professional in terms of seeing that high performance work team come together. And so, we started off first by just giving all team members the same access to the concept. Here's what we want to try to do, and then we went through the exercise of just getting everybody into the same room saying, okay, in order to do what we just said we were going to try to do, what do you need? And for some of these individuals, they're like, hey, can you just tell me what to do? Because, I just came here to work for X number of hours today, and then I plan to go home and sleep, and I'll come back and do the same thing tomorrow, but I didn't really plan to come here to think.
Yeah,
So
I've experienced that too.
yeah, through that process, we kind of screened out a couple folks that we thought, okay, well, we'll bring these guys back, but right now we need people that are open to sharing their thoughts and ideas. And so this was a multinational workforce, right? We had people from different countries coming together. And so we had to really set the tone, the right environment for people to feel confident that they could share thoughts and ideas. So, baiting a little bit with some initial thoughts, we started to generate their ideas. And through that exercise, we formed the first stage of the plan, right? And as they started to see their ideas implemented, as we started to experience success in doing these repairs much faster and quicker than anybody thought could be done, and really kind of an unorthodox way, we set up some lean lines to run these vehicles through versus the standard technical assessment that's done. It really was a completely different environment. And, we really got away from folks that, hey, my title's this, so I need 5 people to work for me and I'm going to tell them what to do. It really became teams working together with kind of a natural leader in that group, but all team members having the ability to present ideas and recommendations for improvement. And I got to tell you, Lupe, it really was, an amazing thing to see happen where individuals that I would say in a lot of cases probably never had a voice to express their thoughts and ideas around continuous improvement all of a sudden really starting to be empowered, and watch out when that happens because the pendulum swings and some really great things start to take place. And, myself and my colleague from the UK who I was working with at the time, we were just so impressed. Their ideas were better than his and my ideas combined, right?
Sure.
They were coming at us with stuff. We're like, wow, great. How can we set that up? Our role quickly became facilitators of moving obstacles that was in the way of them being able to perform those duties. And it was really a short run, short lived contract, but so critical at the time for the folks that needed those vehicles back in short order. And, we were not getting the cream of the crop vehicles. We were getting anything that had to be dragged in or put on the back of a truck because you couldn't roll it onto a boat and send it back stateside for repairs. So these were some pretty tough vehicles. As we started to operate, the team began to self-regulate. It required less and less supervision. And by the last couple months that I was with the contract, I saw people that were very, I would say, shy, and I saw people that were very bold, sharing the space and working off each other's ideas. So you just couldn't fathom 8 months before those guys being able to even have a conversation together just because of the personality differences, but creating that environment where they had trust, mutual trust, common goals, open two-way communication, really led to a pretty amazing experience for me. And I hope for them. I'm sure that they're still remembering a lot of those late, long days, but great success.
Steve, I remember you sharing that experience with me. The thing to really also talk about is the results that you guys had. If you could just talk a little bit about that, because I was really impressed with, like, hey, you took something that was like going at a snail's crawl and you guys just jumped productivity through the roof because of this approach.
Yeah, through the technical process or the technical bay inspection and then sending parts in, the number of vehicles that could get repaired in any month was just shy of, I would say, 20, under 20 at times. And part of it was because of the time it took to get parts in. Part of it was just the length of time and just the inefficiencies of the way that they were doing the assessment. So my coworker at the time, brave and bold as he was, decided that, hey, if we take these vehicles apart right at the beginning of the process, we're going to be able to see what's wrong with them a lot quicker. But we got to figure out how to move them. So working with some of his team that were really kind of moving into this empowered state, they came up with a way to, and they designed these cradles or carts that they could then push the chassis down, one lane, the body down the other lanes, and started to create flow, right? And with flow, You could go to different stations, and the teams would then be able at that station to just focus on specific, improvement opportunities. And long story short, through that exercise, we were cranking out about 110 to I think 116 vehicles a month. And the only reason we didn't get to the contract, maximum expectation was we starved the part system. Just became difficult. But yeah, we went from 8 to 12 to then a big jump up to 35, and then getting just shy of 100, and then we went over the 100 mark. And again, it was just really an amazing story. Great work by just so many people working together.
Yeah, it's a fantastic story, Steve. What was the time frame for that to happen?
That happened in about, for me, the time that I was there was just under a year. So the bulk of the time, I would say, to a lot of focus on the front end to get those high performance work teams operating. And we had some folks that were skeptics, right? They were kind of, laughing at us like, why are you taking time to teach people how to share a common goal or teach them how to work in a different team environment? But it paid off, Lupe, because just, one, respect for those individuals, treating everybody the same in that environment, really broke down the kind of caste system that was in the area where we worked at the time. So it was great.
So in less than a year, or about a year, you increased production by, if my math is right, almost 6x, which is extremely impressive.
Yeah, very, very impressive. And, lots of credit to that entire team that did it. I think I was a facilitator, and after a little bit, I just had to stay out of their way because they were driving improvement faster than I could even help organize it. I really became, hey, what's really stuck right now? What can I go unstick for you?
You set that up very nicely, Steve, because I was about to explain the way I've learned the model. If you wanted to visualize what a high performance work team and the leader, like what's that relationship look like? I've seen a diagram that has the team members, let's say a circle. They've got these bubbles that talk about each person like heads, and they're in a circle. And the leader, in some cases, is going to be in the center. And so it's like everything's centered around the leader. And sometimes you'll see the pyramid where the leader's on top and all the team members are underneath, right? And that's like the org chart. But the model for high performance work teams, the way to visualize it is that same circle of team members, but the leader is on the outside, standing by themselves. And that's to represent, I think, what you're describing is that, hey, you get to a certain point where you're not necessarily needed to drive the day to day because the team owns that. They are the ones that understand what needs to be done. They know the priorities. They know what the goals and objectives are. They know the purpose of the team, like what we're trying to accomplish, and they understand the vision. And therefore, they really start to use that leader as sort of a consulting person. Like, hey, things to think about. Hey, we're going to do this. This is our plan. And then the leader will ask certain questions. Have you guys considered this aspect of it? Oh, you know what? We haven't. That's a good point. And the dynamics changes quite a bit from that perspective.
Yeah, absolutely, Lupe. And, I know in our conversations, you've described a couple different teams that you worked with that we would classify as high performance work teams. And, I'd be curious about, did you come into a job where those teams were already set up, or did you kind of have to start like I did in Kuwait from scratch with a group of folks that you had to really find a way to develop that environment?
The one team that I have, I feel in my mind was the best example of a high performance work team was a team that was already set up in that way. As a matter of fact, the previous plant manager had already kind of pursued that. Like he understood high performance work teams. There was an intentional effort to build the team, build the environment to allow these groups of people to start to function as a high performance work team. So I'd say that I was there after it had been at least started. And then my role was really to, okay, how do I continue this evolution from this team's perspective, right? So how do I enable those things? Some of the things that are in my mind important for a leader to keep in mind is, hey, give clear direction, be very supportive, be an inclusive leader. So everyone matters, everyone's opinion counts. Having team building events, so you're really focusing on trying to get a lot of good cohesion within the team. That's how trust can get built also, is just doing things that are fun but also causes the team to bond. And then, being the facilitator, either whether it's a facilitator with problem solving when there's help needed, or when you're just trying to facilitate a discussion that maybe the team's struggling. But most of the time, these teams were moving. They were, if anything, sometimes I felt like I had to slow them down, like, hey, hold on, slow down. And I like that. I like that was what I had to do versus the opposite, which is where you're like kind of softly pushing people out, like, hey, come on, let's take a chance, let's try this. And people are like, no, I'm not sure I want to do that, that's scary, that's not normal for me. These teams were the opposite. They were like, oh, we're going to go do this, we're going to do that. And I said, okay, well, that's great. Think about this though before you do that. And so that was kind of my way of making sure that they really thought things through from all the different angles that, at least in my mind, were potential problems that, or could be potential problems. And so that's how I saw my role functioning within that type of group of all these great high performing work teams, and then kind of being that sort of social cheerleader of sorts, not the loud and yay yay rah rah type. I am an extrovert, so that comes natural, but it's not about that. It's really around just giving support, saying encouraging words, giving kudos when you see people do some great things, and being the cheerleader in that way really fuels that environment.
Yeah, Lupe, that's great, because I think what you described is really important. Sometimes you're going to have that great opportunity to walk into a team of high performance workers that have already started that journey, right? They're already clicking. And so you have to, as a leader, know how to sustain that team, right? And so I like a lot of what you described is really kind of coming in and trying to understand, how capable they were, trying to understand where their strengths were. If they seemed like they were moving a little too fast, and maybe it was because just your own learning curve, having the ability to say, hey, can you slow down just a little bit? And a good performing high performance work team will understand that part of their role also is to develop their new leader in that organization that may be coming in, because they need that individual to really know their role within inside the high performance work team, which is to support that team, like you said, at whatever direction needs to go to help them be successful. How about were there any opportunities that you recall where you had to really go in and maybe make some corrections to a team that felt they were high performing but maybe had some challenges that they hadn't quite realized yet?
Not quite that exact example, but a similar example around a team that was doing really well, and they were a high performing work team. I felt that there was an opportunity to take them to the next level. And how do you do that? When things are going great, pretty great, how do you convince team members that, hey, you know what, we could be even better? And being able to have that leap of faith, right? Because change is tough for some people. For most people, it can be tough. And so there was some convincing that I had to do. And so this team that the same team I'm talking about that I was fortunate to inherit, they were doing very well. They, on all accounts, safety, quality, they were doing well. There were no big issues, no big opportunities as a team. And I knew that with my lean background, that there was something we could do. There were plenty of things we could do to take this sharp blade of a team and really apply it in some really great ways that would give even more results. And so I started really by introducing the concepts, not saying, hey, we're going to do this, but introducing them. Again, sort of that consultant, like, hey, here's something. What do you think of that? Here's my experience with it. It's been very beneficial, and just sharing that knowledge with the leaders of the teams, and the leaders would be like, you know what, that I think that could help us. And slowly but surely, we started adopting some of these things that really took our team to the next level. And I was super proud to find out later, after about a year of doing this, how the team had taken what you wouldn't have thought could have improved to the next level. And the owner of the company, one of the owners of the company, actually said, like, hey, this past season, it was a facility that dealt with harvest seasons. And so he's like, hey, this season was one of the most successful I ever remember for this facility. And I credit it to the team being open to adopting some of those new ways of looking and thinking of our world at work.
Yeah, Lupe, that's a great story. And one of the other things that you mentioned again about that team that you're referring to right now is the fact that several years after you left that organization and you checked back in with several of the team members, just kind of, as you do, hey, how are things going? The feedback you got really kind of talked to the fact that, you created that very sustainable environment because they were still doing probably 90% of the things that you help shape and help them identify as important. And the 10% they weren't is probably because there were significant improvements that they made to, what was there. And I think that's really a credit to sustaining those high performance work teams once they're set up. And I'm guessing that within those teams, they even had people that changed out and new people coming in. And I think, that's one of the things we'll be able to talk about in some future episodes is, how do you introduce a new person into a team and, really make sure that, they don't get run over by the high performance work team and that they can quickly assimilate and start to grow and really recognize that any team diversity can be a great value to that team. And if teams are not willing to accept diversity, then it can really become a constraint and those teams will begin to falter. So, I think as leaders, we've got to always keep that in mind once we've got those teams established. How do we maintain them? How do we introduce new team members to the team, assuming that some folks may have other opportunities to advance in their careers and move, out of that team. And, we should really have that kind of thought and plan in place as well.
It was amazing to see that team thrive. And, a lot of times some people might say, well, like, what is the benefit? Okay, I get it. Yeah, the team does great. They don't need you. But, the bottom line benefits are really also part of the greatness of high performance work teams, right? So productivity, just like the example you gave with those vehicles, your productivity increased by 6x. I mean, that's impressive. Improved quality of work was what that team saw, and some productivity increases, but really all the metrics that we measured ourselves against as a team with that high performance work team, that site that I was talking about, they took those metrics to places they'd never gone to, whether it was safety, quality. There was a capability that started becoming evident within that team that people actually wanted to be part of that site because there was something about that site, right? It was the culture of the team that was really sort of a beacon, I guess you could say. And people identified us as this sort of incubation chamber of talent, of leadership talent, of cultural talent. And so people would want to come to this site to work. Like they were like, hey, I'd love to be part of the team because of the reputation that they started to build around being inclusive, around the culture. This same facility was, for those people that know what Cal OSHA VPP Star certified site is, this was one of those sites. And these are the types of things that really, I think, came out from the high performance work teams that were built there. I mean, there's more to that, but that was definitely at the core of what we saw. And the capability of those people of the teams was far superior than ever before because of that.
Yeah, Lupe, that's amazing just to kind of know the history of that location and just, what was accomplished, what you took over, but then I think really where that team grew, and then just having an opportunity to hear from some of those folks as well, myself, that had worked with you during that time frame, and where that team continues to flourish and go, and we've also run across locations where the teams failed. They fell apart because it wasn't a true high performance work team. As soon as the leader left, things got unplugged, and unfortunately, things happen like that. So it's going to be really important to, as you develop your servant leadership skills, you start to create that environment for high performance work teams to operate. That you've always got a good plan in play to evolve. Lupe, I'll kind of share a funny story maybe as we're starting to wind down, and it goes back to that team in Kuwait. And I was really thinking one night I planned to go in on the swing shift, and I say swing shift where they were running 12-hour shifts, so it was really the second shift of the day. And so because the parking area was already full of the day shift people, I had to park way down on the end. Not a big deal. Parked down there, walked up to the gate, went in and did my thing. And I realized, what, about halfway through the shift, I thought, these guys are rocking. They really don't need me here, getting in their way. I think I'm going to go home and grab some sleep. I was thinking, are they going to miss me being there helping out? And I really felt that it was okay to go. And so as I walked out of the gate, this gate had a couple of nice security guards and a couple dogs there. And I start walking down the desert, moonlit night, really kind of a pretty evening as I'm walking back to my car. And remember, my car is way down away from the main gate. And as I'm about halfway between the gate and my car, I see these dogs, wild dogs, kind of come over the top of this little sand dune. And my naive self thought, look at that. There's some dogs out here. And then having worked in that environment for a while and not seeing anything that those dogs could possibly catch and eat, I thought to myself, I wonder what those dogs eat. And then I recognized that I had a pretty quick sprint to get to my car before it became their next meal. And luckily, the security guards appreciated me as an individual that supported the work on the site, and they released the guard dogs to chase off the dogs that were going to have me for lunch. So again, just kind of a funny recap there of a story that took place on that same site. And, I really think that had we not had that great environment where people enjoyed coming to work, they may not have volunteered to release the dogs and help me out.
Yeah.
Anyway, I don't know, Lupe, where do you want to end tonight? But if you got another note or story you want to share.
I don't have another story to share, but I will just say that for those people that are interested, there's quite a bit of reading material out there. I don't have a specific one that I'm going to recommend. I don't know if you have one, Steve, but you really want to understand a little bit more about high performance work teams. There's a litany of books out there that you can read and material, I'm sure, but nothing really stands out for me. I know there'll be people that will want to know more about this. I'll put a link of a few books into the podcast text for people to be able to click on, as we've started to do that more and more. But I think at this point, being able to tie some of those things that we talked about as a leader, hopefully people are starting to connect the dots as far as some of the things we listed that describes that high performance work team and what you need to do as a leader. I'd say most of those things we've talked about, so you can understand now where we're trying to build on the material that we've covered. So anyone that wants to give us feedback, we got some great feedback from a couple people, and we are incorporating that into our podcast, and we hope one question was, hey, how do you motivate or inspire team members or teams? And this is sort of that step going towards that direction with high performance work teams. We're going to talk a little bit more about the team aspect in future episodes. Next episode, or the next two episodes, we'll also have another guest speaker. that will add to the discussion.
Lupe, thanks again for the conversation. Really enjoy the opportunity to just, share our experiences and ideas and then do it in this environment. So again, appreciate the time. And this is Steve McKeon.
And this is Lupe Munoz. And this is the Leadership Exchange. Everyone have a great day.